Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, guten Morgen, Dr. Pascal, colleagues here, audience, and so it's my real pleasure to share with you, especially after to listening the Dr. Pascal introduction. Thank you very much for sharing your profound and thoughts that I think provoking. I'm sure that insights very interesting all of us. Some of them shocking a little bit, but I think it's a good. And so your approach about the topic, particularly the day of the truth is a compass, not as a destination. I think that this resonates deeply with, in my case, both theological and sociological frameworks, especially when we try to consider this intersection of a spiritual dimension and education for sustainable development, the ESD. So first of my reflection and your response, it was very, I like to listen to you about you talk about the spirituality as a product, where you talked about your experience in the yoga class. And yes, I think that this is another forum for talking about this new Oriental approach and how we adapt all of these practices, especially in our context, because as you know that sometimes it's not the same that in different countries. There are a said in Asian, they said 1,000 of monks, 1,000 of religions. The master open the door and yourself enter. And this is one approach that there are not only one product, a general product, and how to adapt this product in our society. But a part of this, and so allow me to reflect about, I think the few keys aspects of your speech that I would like to share or focus in your reference. The first is that the spiritual dimension of ESD and the relevance. The second, the challenge of critics of contemporary education practice. I think it's very interesting, this point. And the third, the emancipation education, the first program paradigm. And the fourth, I think they unify all these three processes, integrating the personal inquiry as spiritual virtues in sustainability education. The first about the spiritual dimension of the ESD and the relevance. As you mentioned, you talk about the spiritual can be understand different depending on context. This is very important. Depend on context, culture, and also individual experience. So not all people live the spirituality the same manner. And not in the same context, all the people to describe the same limits between the sacred or not sacred in the same manner or perspective. So I think that it's important that the standpoint that the spirituality is often a vehicle through which individual engage with larger existing questions such as meaning of life, purpose, and ethical actions. So, for example, in Christian tradition, for example, the idea of stewardship is central in environmental ethics, where humans are seen as caretakers of the earth. So the spiritual dimension involves deeply personal experience in their context, that are different, that connect us to the world around us in a meaningful way, that this connection grounded, you mentioned an ontology, and emphasize that our existence and the way we relate to the environment are inherently spiritual. The spiritual dimension invites, of course, a broader dialogue about how inner transformation can influence outer realities and vice versa. So about how world is spiritual is if only or not through the religious is another chapter that maybe is another forum. But I think that I can to remark that depend differently on context, culture, and individual experience. The second point that you talked about the challenge and the critics of contemporary education practice. I'm agree. This is the critics some current education and research practice. I agree that focus on inner develop is both timely and necessary, especially, for example, from the sociological perspective. We can observe that some of modern education is indeed framed with a positivist paradigm. However, this approach based on results tends to simplify and ignore a complex framing inner and maybe lose sight of the deeper existential questions that are intrinsic to human life and their influence in meaning about what we are doing and what I see. Here, I would like to remember that several pedagogues like Paulo Freire, who emphasized education as the process of liberation, one that enables students not just learn how to solve the external problem, but also to critical, critically engage with their own life experience in the context of life's societal issues. In the modern education practice now today, this is an ongoing tension. Well, I know the tension is the word, but is the relationship between approach focuses on outcomes and those to emphasize the process and how to manage this both. And for instance, the project based in pedagogy is often aimed to teach students how to achieve what they desire, thereby transforming them through the learning process itself. These methods, like the active pedagogic or pedagogy based on challenge, do not merely important knowledge but guide students through a process of becoming, where both self-discovery and critical reflection shape the individual growth. Um, do you know that this is very is a complex system because the person give response about the world is not influenced for the school, the second socialization, the family, the first socialization, and also the religions or non-religious value. There are different also in the theological terms that, as you mentioned, that because suffering, for example, in Islam, in Christianity, the concept of suffering is not merely something to be eliminated, but understood as a part of human condition and a path toward the spiritual growth. And in this way, inner develop is not a fix for outer realities, but a process on continual transformation that must embrace the unknown and the mysteries of this life. And for me, this is what his help and how go beyond this paradox that you mentioned in your president to presentation. So this mystery can to give response on this paradox. The third point, briefly, the emancipatory education, the first person paradigm. So, emancipatory education and research paradigm rooted in the first person experience speak to the heart, but both theology and reflection and critical social theory. So, and similarly, the move away from purely objective knowledge to include subjective in the first person perspective is gain ground more than years before, particularly in areas like the phenomenology and the existentialism. You know that exist the purely objective or is a methodology and the process we certificate the results. This is the question of the academia that you know that and also in sociology that disconnect the idea of the reflexivity as a vital that it becomes according me and other the intelligent and human. So there's necessary this reflexivity. There are a recognition that our experience, our background, our emotion, our religion, socialization shape the way that we see and engage with the world. So this is the mean encourage the students more than before and researchers to explore why of sustainability and not just the how the sustainability. And the last for me is all we talked linking as the integrating personal inquiry and spiritual virtues and sustainable education that you presented in the last slide. Indeed, the integration of personality inquiry of the cultivation of spiritual virtues offer a meaningful framework for embedding spiritual dimension in sustainable education. Personal inquiry encourages students to engage in a process of these self-reflection, allowing them to explore their own motivation, values, and relationship to the world. This practice aligns with these inner pedagogies, contemplative pedagogies, or I don't know the name, which emphasize not only to acquisition the knowledge, but the transformation of the inner consciousness or inner approach. And so, in this perspective, the spiritual virtues such as resilience or competence, trust, or another like mindfulness, you mentioned it, are seen as one of the tool, or maybe um, yeah, I don't know if the capacity, but the tools, essential tools that enable individual to navigate, especially to uncertainties and challenge inherent in our world, in our sustainability also work. These virtues not only support the individual in dealing with external complexities, but also foster a deeper connection with the self and the large of question of the life purpose. So for finalize, um, thank you very much. I think that your approach to checking with different questions that maybe it's a pity I'm not staying here in person because it will be great to discuss directly face to face with you. And I appreciate, thank you very much for your approach and your presentation. Congratulations.